Welcome to Relationship Mastery, a podcast for those who want to learn how to master the art of creating happy, healthy, and loving relationships. Please join me, Adey-Jones, and my co-host, Barry Selby, each Tuesday at 1 p.m. Pacific for a lively and informative conversation on everything to do with relationships. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us for another week. I was just saying to Barry now, we had a slight change of plans. We were going to do the second in our series of dating later in life, but today was the jury concluded on the P. Diddy Combs trial. And I've just noticed all morning, I've just had these very, very strong emotions. And Barry very nicely conceded to changing our show to talk about coercion in sexual relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I'm most upset about is they call it RICO, but really what was within the the racketeering conspiracy thing was really all about the pressure, the coercion that was used. It wasn't, the other charges were sex trafficking, transportation of individuals for prostitution and things like that. But for me, witnessing the dismissiveness of their relationship as what's the word I'm looking for? The naivety of people to think that just because there were texts that said, yes, yes, I want to do this. I just felt that people are missing this huge, huge element of coercion. And somebody can be so manipulated that it can appear like they're willing, but they're not. They have been emotionally manipulated, verbally pressured, shamed, using substance to control their free will, using power and authority, gaslighting, telling somebody they want it when they really don't. I'm just trying to think of something. Shaming, obligation, reward. It's just so complicated, and I just feel that so strongly that all of that was overlooked. So how do you feel about it, Barry?
Following that, just for me as a general overarching theme, I feel very strongly about respecting women and appreciating who they are, independent of what's going on. So this case, from what obviously I wasn't in the courtroom, so I don't have all the evidence, but what my feeling is that his actions towards her and manipulation was the key word from what I heard in stuff that was leaked to the press and things I heard about, was that she was saying yes because she didn't have another choice. She was saying yes because she believed it was her way through, rather than saying no because she felt like she would be in a much worse situation if she said no than saying yes. So the texts and communications that seem to appear to be consensual were actually from a point of view of lesser of evils. It felt like the way that they're responding. So, as you said, the naivety, I would say the blind ignorance, frankly, of the jury, not to be aware of these situations. And the challenge is that a large part of the population does not understand this situation in relationships where, and I'm not saying it's necessarily women only, because men go through it sometimes with women as well, where they get manipulated, controlled, and everything else too. But the majority of, in quotes, victims are women in the situation where the man becomes so controlling or coercive or just enticing in a way that she almost feels like she has to say yes to be better off than she would have said no. And so the thing for me is it's to be honest, very disheartening and sickening to hear this sort of thing happens to any woman, and in this situation, repeatedly, and then all the other things that happen as well. Yes, it may seem sensationalized, and perhaps some of it is sensationalized, but at the core of it, there's truth. At the core of it is demeaning manipulation, dysfunction that wasn't necessarily met with due punishment or or indictment. And so there was, for me, there was frustration on this level, not necessarily the same as yours. I feel there's a lot deeper personal resonance with this than there is for me with this. But it still feels very frustrating that this even happened, because part of it is celebrity, because celebrity carries a lot of leverage, it seems, in the media and in the world, because, you know, celebrity can do a lot less wrong than regular people can. You know, there's going to be worse acts. But secondly, there's a, what's the one I'm looking for? It's almost like there's a veneer that the jury takes on automatically because it's celebrity. They don't look at them as a normal person, so they don't have the same standard applied. So there are things that happen in courtrooms, I believe. Again, it's my belief, not what the facts are necessarily, that court cases can be very skewed against the vulnerable or the victim because of control by whatever means is used.
Yeah.
You
But this, yes, no, I mean, that was fabulous, Barry. That was absolutely great. And I want to pick up on a couple of points you make. And
Please.
that is, this is rightly so. This is not just about women by any means. This is about a man or a woman that has been subjected to all of the things I laid out: manipulation, shaming, threatening, coercion, gaslighting. All those other things can apply to men just as they can be applied to women.
Mm-hmm.
It just so happens, because in general, more men have more power than women. So it tends to be that we hear more about it as far as men doing it towards women. I suppose it's the other way around, but trust me, it goes both ways.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, I think what you were saying, I think for me, it's interesting your take on celebrity, and that there's a sort of almost a get out of free jail card for if you're celebrity, that people get seduced by that. For me, it points more to the ignorance, that the shallowness of how deep people want to look into a situation, in the sense that it's like, yeah, but there was a text saying, yeah, great, okay. It's just such a face value judgment. And I really feel like, I mean, the tape of the violence, the beating up, that couldn't influence the jury to see that this was a woman, or like I said, it happened to be a woman this time, that was physically threatened and beaten, and that couldn't play a part in it. And I'm wondering whether, and everybody's like, oh, it was a stretch, this racketeering thing. And I'm thinking, wasn't there, and I know that the case wasn't about domestic abuse. Maybe it should have been. Maybe if it had been that, they would have addressed it more. But I think what I really wanted to talk about here was the everyday person that encounters this, that it's not going to go to court, and that it's not that he was kinky. Hey, fine. If it's two consenting adults and they both, agree to that lifestyle, fine. Polyamory, whatever, nobody's judging that. That's two consenting adults agreeing to something. This was not consensual. This was abuse of power, control, manipulation, drugs, whatever. And it's just very, very different. And I wanted to, it's so many, and you're right, it's very personal for me, having been in situations where I feel I have been coerced into a sexual relationship that I did not want, but felt that I had to participate in on many levels. I think I've shared here before, my very first therapist fell in love with me and made me feel guilty that I had done this to him. And so therefore I should have a relationship with him, because if I didn't, he could be struck off. And I was young and didn't understand, and was so traumatized from my own childhood that I went along with it, even though it was not something that I willingly wanted to do. And it took, thank God, him being so crazy, I mean, involving threatening of life with a gun, that I was able to see the craziness, but it had to get that extreme for me to say, this is not right. This person is crazy and I got to get out of here. And then subsequently, thank goodness, I had some wonderful therapy to help me see that I had been used and manipulated and coerced into a relationship I didn't want. But I've
Right.
also been in other relationships where the shaming, the withdrawal of affection, the other punishing ways that people can treat you if you haven't been willing to have sex 3 times a day or whatever it is. And that's really what I want to talk about is that so many of us in our culture, I'll just talk for as a woman because I am a woman, but that we do feel that we have to show up in a sexual way, that we don't have a choice to keep our man happy, to or woman, whatever it is. And I just, at 66, I'm sort of reflecting back on how many times I was in a relationship where sex was great and I was really up for it and it was fabulous and it was consensual and it's great, but also the subtleties of when it wasn't, or when I was taken advantage of in the sense of I had said no and was, I'm not going to use the word rape, but certainly,
Taken advantage of.
yeah, yeah. I mean, even like, oh, I took a sleeping pill. Oh dear, I was asleep. I had no idea what was going on. That's pretty strong.
Yeah.
And to sort of then have somebody say, "Oh no, but you were responding." It's like, yeah, well, I was drugged. I was on a sleeping pill. Um, you should have known that. That should have factored in. So it really is a conversation today about really checking in with ourselves, both men and women, checking in with yourselves, whether you're the one that is feeling pressured or being taken advantage of or manipulated and coerced, or if you're the one that may be doing that too.
Mhm. Absolutely. That's interesting. The couple of things. One is, I think I've shared on a podcast before that I had that happen to me with a woman I was mad in love with, and was when she stayed with me because she came from England when I came out. But what happened was I was asleep. She came home late from being drunk and decided she wanted to have sex with me, and I was like woken from sleep that way, which in some ways is a fantasy come true. In other ways, it was totally like wrong. So I had that experience. And so I downplayed it at the time, although I said I couldn't do anything. I couldn't be with her after that. It was so doesn't work for my psyche. But the thing to bring it up to the current conversation with what happened to the caucus, I remember vividly seeing that video 2 years ago in the elevator where he basically just dragged her around, kicked her, and pushed and beat her up. If he hadn't been charged with assault as a minimum right there and then, that was a travesty of justice. But the other thing was, and I was thinking about this, is it kind of like a Stockholm syndrome in the sense that she, fell in love with her abuser sort of thing. She became so caught up in the paradigm that she did text back those things because she was so caught up in the confrontive, convoluted affection that was so badly um, distorted that she didn't know which way was up. Basically, is what it seemed like. And
I
that's
want to comment on that as because sometimes you say so many interesting things that I want to go. I'm trying to go.
I know I don't do yeah.
So we'll take it bit by bit, then we'll go back to you. But exactly what you just said there, Stockholm syndrome, the
Mhm.
the abuser slash lover, the unprotector.
Mhm.
I mean, she was how old was she when she first met him? 19,
Yeah,
and he was
something like
this older, you know, professional man that
that.
obviously
Yeah.
successful. She probably felt like a princess. She was the chosen one, and it's that intermittent reinforcement. It's that intermittent, protector, lover, like Prince Charming, and then the flip. The flip. Sorry, the switch flips, and all of a sudden you're the abuser, but then you become the rescuer again. And that is Stockholm syndrome, and you don't know which way is up. All you know is you are craving that other person back. It's a Jekyll and Hyde situation, and you will do anything to win them back, win that loving side of them. You can't, it's such mind control. There's a reason why when hostages are released, they are not released just back to their families or back into society. They have to go through a deprogramming period. There is serious psychological damage done to somebody that is in that, push-pull, intermittent reinforcement sort of experience in a relationship. And they've done that, know exactly what that feels like. And that was one thing I wanted to say. So, because it's such a part of it. It's such a part of it. And I agree with you. Right then and there, the fact that there were people that were ready to get paid off to hide that abuse. They were men that took $50,000 each to keep their mouths shut and get rid of that tape. I mean, is
it doesn't exactly hide the idea of guilt.
Yeah, it's just, it's beyond me, the level of corruption, moral corruption that people will engage in. And again, I think that goes back to the fact that it was a celebrity. It was somebody that could, number one, afford to pay somebody that much to keep their mouths shut, and also a protecting that person's image. And that came up a lot, was his influence on a generation or two. And it was like, but what influence? Is he a stand-up person that you? And again, it has nothing to do with his sex life. It has nothing to do with that. As I said, it might not be something I'm into, but I'm not going to judge it. If it's two completely consenting adults, clear-headed, know exactly what they want, fine by me. But this clearly was not about that. This was about abuse on every level: physical, emotional, and sexual. People turned a blind eye, and people were aware of it. And that's where they were saying it was racketeering, because it was a group of people. There was an understanding. This is what went on. It just, again, I think there should have been different wording that they could have used to address this. That wasn't so. I think you hear racketeering and immediately going, you start thinking of sort of mob land and type of the hitman and the money man and the this and the heavy and the whatever. So it put it up to a level where they feel they couldn't reach that. But what about that middle level? That level of, as you said, criminal acts. Beating somebody up is a criminal act. Besides all the mental and emotional manipulation that was going on, that is more subtle. So
I'm stuck.
want Will Barry so I can react to it. Will Barry input.
Well, that's the thing. I have a friend of mine who's basically she's got out. Well, she did get out of a relationship quite a while ago and got back into it again. And a few weeks ago, she sent pictures of bruises on her face, not just close, not the whole face, but just like sections where she said. Now, of course, I'm going by what she said, and I trust her because I've seen his stuff in the past where he basically smacked her around, and she got so scared she moved out. She looked for somewhere else to live. But the thing is, it took that much for her to go, enough, I can't do this anymore, because she'd gone through, I believe, emotional abuse and certain manipulations for a couple of years before that. I don't know how long the relationship was, but certainly more than a year or two. And so to finally say, enough, I cannot do this anymore, she finally got, and maybe it was the physical wounds that she showed, because maybe, I don't know the details, but I believe it was an escalation to that level where she was showing like cuts on her face and bruises. And partly because she's also a model, so she needs to look good on camera, which is hard to do when you have disfigurement because of injury. That may have been the shock to the system, the wake-up call that said that she got clear and said, you know what, I can't do this anymore, I'm out. Because the thing is, it does take sometimes for people to reach a certain breaking point that hits them somewhere where they can no longer deny that it's not working for them.
Yeah.
Because sometimes for people, it's easy to pretend that it's okay.
Yeah. And I'm going to jump into here again, because this is such an important point. I was in a relationship where I didn't have the physical wounds, but I would sometimes, the threats were there, and the hand coming and punching a wall right in front of my nose, skimming the hairs on my nose, and not that I have a hairy nose, but it was so close I could feel the wind on my nose. I because it wasn't physical, I couldn't justify leaving. I was being so, the gaslighting was convincing me that I was the cause of the rage, and if I just wasn't the way I was or did things differently, this person would not behave in such a rageful way and cruel and vindictive and vicious and all of that. And it was only once I left. I mean, there was destroying of property and things like that, and breaking of things in the house, that smashing things that would, also made me very fearful the next time that fist would actually hit me in the face, not the wall. But I remember watching, once I left, I was watching, it was either a news report or a documentary, and it was on domestic abuse. And I remember watching it, and I was so I remember watching it thinking, oh my God, that's me. Oh my God, that's me. And I had never allowed myself to see it that way, because I didn't have the physical bruise. I didn't have and I almost wished it was physical, because then it would have been validation for how I felt.
Proof, basically.
Proof to myself that this is abusive, because I kept minimizing and blaming myself, because that's what I was told, was I was asking for it. I was the cause of this. So there was, this, but I remember it hit me, and I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I endured that for years and didn't realize what it was. Because again, and again, it's that the subtlety of the mind games and the threats and the shaming, and somebody's knowing your weak points, or your where they can manipulate, and these people are so clever. And yes, you can turn around and say, in the case of Ventura, you can say, well, she wanted fame and fortune, she wanted to be a star, or she wanted to be this. But give me a break, she was 19. And she was promised these things, and she had dreams, and all of that was exploited for some very, very perverse, cruel. And that was the other thing. Sorry, but witnessing the family, and especially the female members of the family, being so joyous and so yeah, I mean, I'll just say it. I just found it unbelievable that they could. I mean, yes, as a family, I'm sure they're relieved that he didn't go to prison for the rest of his life. I'm sure. As a mother myself, I'm a mother of 2 sons, and I know that no matter what my sons do, I will always be their mother. I will always love them, but I won't defend bad action. I will not do that. And to see them celebrating with no humility, I felt as a mother that there should have been some, at least as a female, there should have been some sort of less public displays of joy and victory that her son got off, because the tape's there. The tape showing him beating up a woman was there. That must have, to dismiss that is unbelievable to me as a mother.
This is another flavor of Love is Blind, really. That's what it is. It's like they're not willing to look at things because they love them. They love him. They will not see. Literally, they'll be blind to see certain things. So it's not even within their framework, because they know that if they look at it, they'll lose the love they have. So it's almost like they're going to make a hard choice. No, I'll keep loving, so I'll ignore and not look at those things that will disturb my peace, so I can stay loving. And it's a choice some parents make.
Yeah, I can see that, and I can see that in the case of all the sort of allegations of consent and non-consent and all of that. I can understand that somebody just, choosing to only hear what they want to hear. But when there was video evidence of physical abuse, I'm sure that they have either been told that there is physical evidence. So it's not like it's just hearsay, or he said this and she said that, and I believe my son was innocent, and he never did any of these things. I'm sorry, there was a videotape. It's out there. Everybody has seen it. And I just really hope that we don't have short memories. I mean, I hope that we don't go back into he was, found not guilty of the most serious crimes. Therefore, he has a clean slate, because I don't believe that somebody that has behaved in the way he has behaved has found God and is going to change their behavior. I think this person needs to be, I think people need to be very wary of him and people like him. And I do feel he needs to be held accountable, even if it wasn't within a court, that somehow public opinion is on the side of what's right.
Yeah. The thing that's interesting, because a couple of things come up. One is, yes, you can find God. You can find God in prison too, so you still do your time there, first of all. Secondly, though, this just reminded me of this is a court case going back. Was it Brock Taylor, the athlete who got exonerated for a crime? He raped a woman, and he got off. I'm trying to remember now. This is in the back of my mind. Just because what I'm saying is there have been cases that came before this one where the jury found for the defendant when the evidence seemed very clearly that they were in the wrong, particularly around abuse of women. And this isn't, because it's not the first time it's ever happened by far, but it may be the most visible and celebrity one. So maybe it's enough. This may be the one that finally brings to people's awareness that this stuff happens and it needs to be considered and ideally stopped before it gets too far. Because it happens so many times in the past.
And I just want to say, you just said women again, and it is men and women. There are young men that are exploited, and not just young men, older men. I mean, there are men that are equally. I think there are less cases simply because of, as I said, the power dynamic tends to fall. More men are in a position of power than women, but there are very many powerful men that want to take advantage of other men, just as they want to take advantage of women. So there are men that have absolutely suffered exactly the same type of thing here. The same sexual abuse, trauma, gaslighting, shaming and blaming and all of that stuff. So we really do want to end on the fact that these are victims. Let's just call it a victim, as opposed to whether it's a male or a female that have been abused by a perpetrator. Again, male or female perpetrator. But this naivety or ignorance or whatever it is about emotional and psychological abuse, and there was physical in this too, as evidenced on tape. But the lack of awareness around that really disturbs me. It really does. I think we as a society need to be educated on the subtler forms of abuse that can go on.
Yeah, no, totally.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for indulging me. Emotions, as you can tell, I was chuntering away this morning going, we got to do this one first, because it's too right on the top of my mind right now. So thank you, Barry. Thank you everyone for listening, and pay attention to where you feel that your relationship, you were being coerced in your relationship against your will. Really pay attention.
And if you have any thoughts about this or feelings about this, and you want to either get in touch with either one of us, or you want to make comments below wherever you watch or listen to this show, feel free to do so. We'll respond if you do.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, thank you again, everybody, and we will see you next week. Have a great week, everyone. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye. We trust you enjoyed this episode and invite you to share this with your friends and loved ones. In fact, please subscribe to our Relationship Mastery podcast. That way you'll get each new episode, fresh and shiny, as soon as it is released. We'd love to hear from you as well. So go ahead and enter your questions and comments at relationshipmastery.show. Take good care. We will connect with you in our next episode of Relationship Mastery.